Greetings gamers, my name is Johnny Retro and welcome back to another episode of Retro Raider. Let me tell you guys, I'm very excited with today's episode because I'm going to review for you guys Still Assault, a brand new release on the Nintendo Switch. First of all, let me start by giving a huge shout out to Tribute Games that provided me a review code in order for me to review Still Assault for you on the Nintendo Switch. Now let me just take this out of the way, okay guys? I'm a casual Nintendo Switch gamer, alright? I love the Nintendo Switch, I love its exclusives, but let's say that it is not my main gaming platform. But Still Assault, and by any means guys, without any endorsement, this is exactly the type of game that I like to play on my Nintendo Switch. So, what is Still Assault all about? Still Assault is a run-and-shoot action platform game developed by Zenovia Interactive and published by Tribute Games. This game was finally released yesterday, October 28th, after a very successful Kickstarter campaign that started in 2015. And during the last 6 years, the game changed a lot from its original concept. Originally, the game was focused to be more of an 8-bit NES-like game, but in the end what we got is a nod, a huge tribute to the 16-bit era of arcade games. And arcade, or arcade-like, is the key word to explain or to summarize what Still Assault is all about. Of course that, to me and probably to a lot of fellow retro gamers out there, the graphics, the visuals, it's what is going to attract you in this game. What we have here is a beautiful pixel art game, very inspired from the 16-bit era. We have tons of those cool old school Neo colors here, very detailed backgrounds, very detailed enemies, very interesting animations also. It's one of those games where, you know, if this game had been released in the late 80s or early 90s, it would be, you know, mind-blown back in the day. And I would definitely say that, of course, that everybody can and should enjoy this game, but I think that the primary target is definitely towards retro gamers. Starting right away on the menu screen, we actually have some very interesting filters that we can use. Stuff like, you know, bilinear filters, CRT scan lines, 4:3 aspect ratio of course, and we even have old school TV curvature. Yes, you do have to play the game in 4:3, but I mean, that's part of the experience. The rest of the filters is optional, but it's cool to have them. Still on the graphics department and how the game looks and plays, I'm more of a dock Nintendo Switch gamer. I do prefer to play on the TV, but in handheld mode, the game just looks beautiful. And it's one of those games where I'm very curious to see how is it going to look on the upcoming Nintendo Switch OLED. Now, about the story of the game. The story definitely is not the most deepest one, but here it is. The game takes place in an overgrown post-apocalyptic America, after all major American cities were abandoned due to a mass radiation attack in the late 30s. 2030 to be exact, because it takes place in the future. Magnus Pierce, a famous inventor and roboticist turned army general, rose to rule over the Ashes. His regime began a large-scale purge of all its real and suspected enemies, including the parents of our protagonist, Taro Takahashi. Taro grew up to be a core member of the Daybreak Resistance, an emergency led by Hans Albert and Sonia Singh. In early 2046, Magnus Pierce soldiers started collecting and refurbishing old nuclear, military and robotic tech. After that, they started restoring the power grids of various abandoned cities, which they now occupied. Of course that us, as the protagonist, Taro, we need to investigate and of course take action. Again, story is not the reason why you are going to play this game. The gameplay is pretty straightforward. We run, we shoot, we jump, but we also have a very clever gimmick to spice things up. We have a zipline. This zipline allows us to move vertically, horizontally and diagonally. Now, mastering this zipline mechanic is key to beat the game. It is a gimmick, but it is not that type of gimmick where, you know, the game just focuses around it. Or let's say that you just get bored after a couple of minutes of gameplay. No, it's really a strong complement of this old structure-like gameplay from back in the day. We also have this beam whip to attack the enemies. We have jump and double jump, and there's some really hardcore platform sections here. So I would say that in terms of gameplay, it's one of those games where it's easy to get into, but very, very difficult to master. We have 5 chapters, it is not a very long game, and let me tell you, I got the review code yesterday, and yes, I've beaten the game, but I've beaten the game in the very easy difficulty. We also have easy, medium, hard difficulties, and yes, it is a hard game, but here's the kicker. We also have an old school arcade style. And when I say arcade style, I mean arcade style, because this level of gaming is very difficult. It's one credit only. That's it. One life, one shot. If you just want to grab the game, finish, the gameplay, the story, that's it. I mean, we're talking about 2 hours of gameplay more or less. But if you really want to get good at it, if you want to get, to finish the arcade mode of the game, well, you'll be in for a treat if you're an old school gamer. The enemies, we don't have a variety of enemies, but they're challenging, they're interesting. Of course, that the theme is always very mechanical. We fight, loads of robots. The boss fights are very, very interesting. And I like the whole art style in general. Again, it's very pixel art, but it has this, old school anime vibe to it also. As a matter of fact, we have a couple of cutscenes to complement the storyline. This is actually how the story is presented to you, and it almost feels like you're, inside of a living manga, if you will. Now, music. You guys know me. This is, of course, a very important part of video games in general for me. Soundtrack. The soundtrack is amazing. Again, very old school. It mixes that, old retro vibe, but with heavy metal. Definitely the type of music that you would listen to on an old arcade. It complements the fast gameplay, it complements the visuals. I mean, it just blends really, really well with the concept of the game. This is pretty much Still Assault. It's an indie game, it's a pixel art game, it's a very simplistic game, but I think that it is one of those games where we have to appreciate it for what it is. And what this is a game made in 2021, but aiming towards, the good old school arcade crowd. Now, to be honest, no really complaints about the game in general. I just think that, this is one of those games where it is supposed to be simple, but I just think that the gameplay style could be a little bit more explored. Maybe some different attacks, more enemy variety with different strategies, but aside that, it still is a beautiful and very well crafted game. If you like arcade games, let's say that you like games like, Metal Slug, or even some console games like, Metroidvania in some aspects also, Gunstar Heroes for example, this is the type of game for you. So, do I recommend Still Assault? I absolutely do. If you like retro gaming, if you like arcade-like games, if you like the good old 16-bit era, if you like pixel art games, definitely give this game a try. The game is out today on both the Nintendo Switch and Steam. I had fun with the game. I still want to spend a couple of more hours in Still Assault and try to get better at the game, maybe exploring the arcade mode a little bit more. And this was my review, guys. I really hope that you have enjoyed my review. And if you have the extra time, feel free to follow me on social media. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And as always, guys, take care of yourselves, take care of the gaming community, and game a lot.